Welcome to Literally Books, the podcast where we read literally anything because it shouldn't be a saga to find your next favorite read. My name is Magda.
And I'm Lindsay.
And today we have a super exciting episode. We're going to be chatting with Ali Gorton, who is the author of We Have Reached the End of Our Show. Yay!
Woohoo!
So excited to talk about this. So many thoughts. But before we get started, Lindsay, what have you been reading?
I am reading The Hounding by Xenobe Purvis.
I've never heard of this book.
I posted about this on my story, and I'll post I actually probably will have recorded and posted a review of this already by the time this episode comes out. But it's yet another book about a woman who turns into dog. I told you, like, this is my only interest, apparently. I picked up Nightbitch, and now I've picked up this. But this is, like, kind of more virgin suicide-y, where it's, like, it's a group of sisters in, I don't know, like, the 18th century or 19th century, a long time ago. They live in, like, a rural hamlet in the UK. And this drunk ferryman basically starts a rumor in the town that he sees them turn into dogs and that they've been possessed by the devil. And the rumor spreads like wildfire. And it's all about the impact of that on the sisters.
Are you okay?
What do you mean? Tell me.
Initially, I thought I was just like, what's going on? Because this sounds like really sad. But then at the end, it kind of turned a little bit funny. That was like, what is happening?
I think it's supposed to be like, you know, like the Salem witch trials kind of, or something like that, you know,
okay,
like where,
gotcha.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's interesting. I feel like we've been reading really heavy stuff, and like it's really interesting for the books that we gravitate towards after reading heavy things, because mine is completely the opposite of that.
You want like light and bright?
I want something light, bright, easy, because I think we mentioned this in one of our previous episodes. We have been having to read a lot of dystopian, sad books that are really great, but I'm like, okay, I need some levity and happiness and silliness.
I don't know. I go the opposite way. Like if I'm feeling like off, I want to get into the muck of it. I don't know. I'm like a person who listens to sad songs when they're sad.
I love that. Are you liking this one better than Nightbitch? I know that one for you was a little bit of like,
The writing style in Nightbitch I thought was like a little bit tough. I very much enjoyed this one, and it was like quick, and it's Xenobe Purvis's first novel, which this is like I'm in a spell of reading people's first novels, and it's really good.
Good. That's really good. Hey, spreading the word out. You know, that's how we find really good stories.
Exactly. What are you reading?
Not somebody's first novel, but I have been reading Bull Moon Rising by Ruby Dixon. So fully in the opposite of that. This is like a high romance smut book. But honestly, I bought this as well in one of those liberal sales, and it was like $2 or whatever. And I went in because I needed something like silly and fun and easy. And the story is like really good. Like, yes, it has smut, guys. There is smut in here. You can bypass it. But the story is really fun. Like, you have a story about Aspeth is our main character here. And she's like the daughter of this holders person, that the holders are the ones that have a lot of land and they're supposed to be really rich. They're like your stereotypical, like old school lord land, like people that had a lot of land, and the dad had gambled all of the money away, so she kind of has to go figure out a way to try to kind of save her property and her land and the title of her family, because otherwise they're gonna get invaded by people. So one of the ways that they do this is like the power system works and is attached by these artifacts. So there's like special different artifacts throughout the kingdom, I want to call it, or land, that have like special powers, and that's kind of what gives like different people like their richness, their power over things. And the way that you find them is that you hire these guilds that will go and search for these artifacts, and then that's the way that you can potentially go get some of this power back. So she decides to enlist into one of these guilds and training to go find a lot of these artifacts, and that requires a lot of digging and it's very grunty work, but it's stereotypically done by
grunty
men.
Work.
Yeah, very grunty.
Pun intended.
I know, very intended. But this is done by men, and these are like two women that are kind of going into this world, and they just kind of get put together in this cast of misfits that are just like some women and people of other species that people just kind of look down upon them because they're joining the guild. And it's just fun. It's a really fun story. We meet our male main character is like a mix between a bull and a man. And let me tell you, the voice narrator of the guy,
It's a good one, huh? Okay.
Very good. Like, I was just like, I am sold when the guy came in. There's a little bit of marriage of convenience. We have a little bit of fantasy. Very smart. Oh, best thing, our female main character is 30 years old.
What? She's not 23?
I know she's not
Wow.
young, virgin 18-year-old. She is a virgin because of the time, but like she's like a 30-year-old. She's fucking smart. She wears glasses. She's not like, I am skinny and thin and I'm powerless. No. She has her own, like, she knows herself. She's like a baddie. I'm like really enjoying it. It's I was really surprised. It took me by surprise because I was coming in a little judgmental, but the story and the writing is good, Lindsay. I kind of recommend it. So if you want like a little bit of like a smutty book that has a good story, go to this one. It's so good.
When you were talking about the male main character, or the male narrator, sorry, I was thinking about, have you seen that meme online of that guy having his translator, like he's doing like a press conference from like, he's like a soccer coach, I think. And he's like listening to the translator, and the translator's like, they would really love to know if the game felt like it was well played. And he was like, wow, that's a very sensual translator. And it like really makes me laugh every time I see it, because the guy was like, okay. Look at the coach, who's
Also,
super into it.
Good on him for recognizing that, like, okay, that guy's voice is kind of like
Yes.
hot.
And he like says it aloud in the interview, and it's so funny. Anyway, yeah, that's a total sidetrack, but I just thought that was funny.
Honestly, I need to go look up to see who the narrator for the guy is, because I was like, damn. Okay, I've never been a person that gets attracted by somebody's voice that much. Like, I know there's like a really big followings about it, but that's not me. I might be changing my mind with this narrator. I'll have to go look him up and post him. You want to take a little bit of a break?
Let's do it.
So it's time for us to kind of get into a little bit about, we have reached the end of our show. I'm going to give you a couple of high level thoughts, a little synopsis before we start chatting with Ali Gordon and ask her a few questions about her book. So maybe let's start out with a little synopsis, if that sounds good.
Yeah, and I think we should say we're going to try not to give away any spoilers in this book, but some of them might come up naturally in the conversations of our themes. So if you don't want any spoilers, hop straight to the interview with Ali or go read this book immediately.
It's so good, guys. Go read it.
So good.
I highly recommend. It's really good.
So excited. Okay, so let's start with our synopsis. It's 25 days until the end of the world, literally. An asteroid is headed toward Earth, and our main characters, Gabe and his partner Josie, are grappling with what to do next.
This is further complicated by the fact that Gabe has been dealing with his own impending death since he was diagnosed with terminal cancer a few years earlier.
With the end of their lives quickly approaching, Josie and Gabe decide to travel with Gabe's younger cousin, Lisi, from New York to her home in California to say goodbye to Lisi's parents.
This is a road trip story, a sci-fi story, a coming-of-age story, and most importantly, a love story.
I was not emotionally prepared for this book.
I was not either. But is it weird that I did kind of find it heartwarming? Like, really heartwarming, the story, even though it's about death.
I cannot agree. I am in love with these characters and we'll gush to them, but like Josiah, or Josie, Gabe's partner, is the most lovely, wonderful. Everyone in this book is like the most wonderful human being, but Josie in particular, I was like, oh my God, this man is so perfect.
He was so sweet. I love them. He, not because you just said that he was perfect, but I was just about to say, like, he just kind of reminds me. There are a few qualities.
I know what you're going to say right now, Magda. I have never met anyone who's so disgustingly in love with their husband.
No,
Go ahead.
I wasn't going to say, no. I was going to say, like, a couple of his personality traits, it just reminded me of myself a little bit. Like,
yourself. Okay,
yeah,
never mind.
like,
I thought you were going to say, your husband. I was like, oh,
so
yeah.
much. No, but just the way that he kind of tackled a lot of how he handled like stress. Like, he just let it, like, I just need to go to the, like, a checklist type of item. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this and just kind of get into it. And I just said that, like, it was kind of like what the relationship between him and Gabe needed. And I just kind of really related to that in the sense of kind of not going through the motions, but kind of doing certain things to not have to deal with the heavy emotions at that point. And I think I kind of love his progression of the character, because you can kind of start seeing that towards the end he lets go of holding it together so much. And I really love that. So I think that's the one thing that I kind of related to him. I'm not in love with myself that much, I promise.
No, but I think I see what you're saying, and it's funny because like I feel like there are Gabe and Josie are two sides. They're a perfect complement to each other because they are extremely different characters. And I feel like, yeah, Josie is like a nurturer. He is a doer. He's someone that is like, okay, on to the next, like really takes heavy emotional things and breaks them down into their like little parts. And I do understand that, but I also feel like I related with Gabe a lot because Gabe is like, I have to like suck the most out of life that I possibly can and like do whatever I can to feel most like myself and just live so like passionately from day to day. And I found that to be, I'm not a nurturer or caretaker by like in my soul. I wish that I was, but I'm very much not. And I think it's an interesting dynamic that they have it. And I think it's an interesting dynamic that we have.
No. You're my Gabe to my Josie. I love that. What was one of your favorite things about this book?
I think, oh God, it's so hard to say. I have to say, like, Allie reached out to us and I didn't really know what to expect because like the topics are like big. Everything in this book is big. Like the characters have big personalities. The premise is big. Gabe's diagnosis is big. And so it's really hard to know like what you're coming into because it's like these very intense things. And so you're like expecting this book to be like very over the top. It's very like premise focused. And what I think Allie does so beautifully is like write these very nuanced, tiny moments in this like very big theme and big idea that are, I think, like maybe some of the most authentic, genuine things that people in these positions like would feel. I was so shocked at how well they were written.
Yeah, I think she did such a good job because this is a short story, you guys. It's maybe like about 150 pages long, and she packs so much into the story, but that it's, I think to steal your word, Lindsay, it's nuanced and it's good, but it's not like overwhelming you with the amount of information. It's still giving you space to feel and go through the emotions that our characters are going through as they're kind of mourning their lives, because they are in this process of they're trying to preemptively trying to mourn what it means to lose their life, and not just because of the asteroid, but potentially also because of Gabe's cancer diagnosis. And I just found that really lovely how she dealt with that.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like we'll probably talk more with her about this, but like we're giving you major plot points, but the major plot points are not really the thing of the book. Like for me, you're not spending a lot of time in like, you know, catastrophe, like it's not Mad Max. You're not getting Mad Max. You're not getting like I don't know. You're not getting like beaches in the cancer discussions, right? Like it's not like where she puts the emphasis in the book is the thing that makes the book so good.
Mm-hmm. It's just like the relationship and like the human connections that you have, and you're the ones that are pre-existing, like the one with like Josie and with Gabe, or the ones that they kind of heal and address along the course of the book between like Lizzie and Josie, and then the new ones that they find with new people that they meet in this road trip too. And I love that she gives us like a little bit of flavors on what these different connections mean and how they come about, how people deal with the impending doom as well, which everybody reacts so differently when you're giving bad news. And we can kind of see it, how different humans are going to be handling this type of situation.
You're so right. Okay, so I have to ask you, if it were you, because you're right, we see various reactions. We see people like get really debaucherous. We see people kind of disintegrate. We see people, I mean, we see it through the characters of the book. I won't give like really specific examples because I don't want to ruin it. But what do you think you would do? Like, how do you think you would react in this situation to like big news?
After crying a lot, I think probably I would get like a moment of devastation, but I think honestly, I would try to kind of go visit places that I've always wanted to go visit. Like one of the things is like they go to the Grand Canyon and enjoy the nature. And there were multiple people there because they wanted to see the beauty of what the world has to bring. I don't know how doable it is and how people are going to be reacting for you to kind of make that type of road trip. But I love the idea of trying to go visit the best of what our world has to offer in the natural wonders. I like to think that that would be me. But knowing myself, I would go into like a massive depression. But I like to think that I would want to like honor what our earth has to give us, I would hope. What about you? How would you handle that?
It's so interesting. I think in this way, I'm also Gabe, where like I am a person who, faced with big news, it's my worst and best quality. I think that like I am highly adaptable to situations. So like, even if something is really terrible, I will naturally just accept that terribleness very quickly. And that is bad in that, like, sometimes it's like, oh, I don't know if you should be accepting that quite so quickly. You could just like try and change your circumstances. But I also think like Gabe's reaction is like, he's not, obviously for reasons that we know, like he was already grappling this for a long time. But even before, like he's not devastated, not really. He's like not excited even, but like yes. And he's like, I just want to hug the people around me really tightly and do whatever they want to do as long as I can be in their presence. And like, I don't know for sure that I would be that way, but I do feel like I understand that reaction in my soul.
Yeah, and I think he kind of gave us a different perspective too in the book, because at one point in the story, they get attempted to get mugged by somebody else that is kind of
Right.
going through something, and everybody's like, I guess Josie and Lizzie, they're like so mad at the guy. They're like, how dare him, blah blah blah. And Gabe comes from this perspective of understanding, is like, he just found out he's dying. Like, of course, like you don't know what they're gonna go through. You don't know how people are gonna react, and what he did and what he's trying to do is an understandable behavior. So he kind of offers us this glimpse of like, he has already had time to deal with his diagnosis, and he gives us a better understanding of how people are acting around him. Like he becomes our voice of reason at some point, because he already knows what's happening while everybody else is still grappling with the consequences of like what it means to die.
But reason, and then also delusion, because you're like, my
Yes.
guy, like he's like annoyingly zen at points where you're just like, hey, like he's sort of separated from the realities of everyone else because he's like our sage, wise man. And you're like, my guy, like they're all dealing with the fact that everything is shutting. It's just really interesting
Yes.
to see like, yes, he's our center, but he's not perfect. He's like flawed in a way that I feel like he's not always like really in tune with how difficult this would be for like the rest of humanity, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
Oh, go ahead. No, you go.
Oh no, go ahead. No, I was just gonna say, like, I love that. I don't know if you see this the same way that I did, but I love that in her story. Like Gabe is kind of dealing with this cancer and like brain tumors and things, and that's kind of what's ultimately ending his life. And I kind of love the idea that for Earth is like this big asteroid that it's coming towards Earth, which is also like a big tumor that it's about to like end the world. And I just kind of love like that relationship. Like we're seeing both at the micro and at the macro level, like the ending of life. And I love the connection and I'm sure that was intentional, but I just love kind of coming to the realization of what she was kind of trying to say. I don't know. I really loved it. It was just such a she packed so much into these pages. Like I loved it.
It's like high impact again. And like, how would you feel like this is why I love Gabe so much, because for him, he feels relief. He's not alone in this experience anymore. It like is a weird conduit for connection, because he's like, now this thing that I've had to deal with alone, I now get to deal with the two people I care most about in the world. And I just think it's such a smart, it's such a smart idea. I am curious though about what I was going to ask you is like, how do you feel about Lacey, Gabe's cousin? Because she's our like probably our most realistic reaction, but also like our toughest.
I think honestly, she represents most of us, honestly. Like she gets freaked out when like she gets the news, and she's the type of person that I think we can kind of see throughout her story a really good personal growth. Like we can kind of see towards the end of it. I don't want to give too much, but like some of the roles kind of get inverse. Towards the beginning, it's Gabe and Josie trying to look out for her and kind of taking care of her in a way, kind of making her feel okay. And then like towards the end, we can kind of see that maybe at the very end, like we can kind of see that she's the one that's growing up and taking care of them instead. And I just kind of, I really liked that and I appreciated her character growth, and her reactions were really realistic of what would want to happen. Like, I want to go see my parents and I want to spend time with them, but I also want to be with my super amazing cousin that I love so much and I've always looked up to him. And I really liked her. I know that she was kind of a tense character to grow, because I know there's like a little bit of tension between her and Josie, which we never really understood what the root cause of that was. But maybe it was jealousy. I don't know. What did you think?
I want to ask Allie about that, so I'm not going to say what I think, but I do think that their like relationship is interesting because Lacey and Gabe are so similar. Yeah.
Yeah. But I liked her, and I think she does grow up a lot in those 30 days or 25 days that we're waiting for Earth to end. And I really love that character growth and her acceptance in a way of kind of doing the best that she could for her cousin and honoring him in a way.
I also think Lacey is interesting in that she is, even before this conversation, because this book sort of goes back and forward in time. As we approach the end, we get flashbacks of earlier interactions between the characters. And Lacey is someone who, understandably, but like it's very difficult to watch, like really can't face the reality of life's darker parts, including Gabe's diagnosis, but also like she's much younger. And so she's someone who like is an avoider. Like if something is hard, she kind of runs. And I think to your point about her growth, it's really hard because you want to be super judgmental, but she is the most realistic in that way, where I'm like, yeah, nobody wants to deal with this super terrible shit. I don't know. It's really interesting. I loved that part of her character.
That's so good, because I think that's such a great way of describing that she's an avoidant. Like she avoids things, and I can see that at the end of it, it's the opposite of that. Like she confronts things head on. And I didn't even catch the avoidance part, but you're so right. So good.
It's just, I think it's like, to your point about being like a book about macrocosms and microcosms, like the asteroid is our macrocosm and our characters are our microcosms in terms of like, how do you move through the world when things get really tough? And I think what's so cool about it is like, none of them are good or bad. They're just very different. Like Gabe is sort of a like, you know, I'm going to live out loud and make the most of things and like but like very artistic and very unrealistic. Josie is our center, our realistic, we're getting through things. We're like, what do we got to do next? And Lacey is our like avoider. She's our like, I'm here for a good time, not a long time. You know, like, I don't know. It's just, I really like the way that the story like weaves that into the various plot lines.
Yeah, Jessica Jeff. She also kind of leaves us really good hints about how other people are dealing with this. And like we get to see a little bit of people like outside of Vegas just like partying it up, living their best lives, getting married, but not really, just kind of like trying to make the most of things. We also kind of get like a quick little glimpse because they find this house, like a really rich person's house at some point, and they're like, I wonder what happened to these people because the house has been abandoned. And they're like, probably in a bunker somewhere. And it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, there's probably rich people somewhere hiding it out and see if they can survive this. And like, I want to know about that story too.
No, I love that too, because it is very much like at the end of the world, there's nothing you can do. That lack of control, like no matter what circumstances you're in, like you're not getting out of this, is such a cool, that moment where they're in the rich people's house is such a cool way to show that. Like your possessions aren't going to do shit for you in this context. And I think it's like kind of amazing the way that she shows that.
Exactly. It also reassured me that I should keep some DVDs around in case the end of the world comes so I can watch some movies too.
Yes, because Lacey does sit and watch movies and go swimming. And like one of the first things that you hear is like people start leaving their jobs because they're like, yeah, why would I be working? You just see like the silliness of it all in some ways, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, again, I think we're struggling because we want to like talk about the themes, but we don't want to give away everything that happens in the book. I mean, again, like this is a book about connection, about interrelationships. The plot line is sort of secondary, but I think with that, is there any last thing you want to say before we just talk to Allie about it?
No, I think we should ask her all of our questions. And again, we're going to try not to spoil it, but I think we have so many questions for her. I can't wait to chat.
All right, we'll be right back.
Welcome back, everybody. So now we're going to start chatting with Allie Gordon. And Lindsay, do you want to do a little bio?
Yes, Allie Gordon is a writer, performer, and educator living in Los Angeles. A New York City native, Allie spent many years in New York working as a musical theater actor, as well as performing comedy at the renowned Upright Citizens Brigade Theater. She holds a double major in musical theater and English from the University of Michigan. Allie also writes musicals and has performed and taught comedy all over the world. She promises she is quite funny despite the subject matter of this, her debut novel. Welcome, Allie!
Hello! Yay! Thank you so much for having me. I think you are both unbelievably smart and have great taste. So I feel very honored.
We love this book, so I think we do. We do have really good taste.
And they have each the run of our shows.
We all have good taste.
Yes. Perfect example of our great taste, this wonderful book. Also, we were joking about this before, but like even reading that bio, I was like, I am so tired on your behalf because that is a lot of things that you are doing creatively, no less, at any given point.
I mean, there is that thing of like, when you start to monetize the thing that you're good at, it suddenly becomes your job. And that's just like, it's sort of, you can't stop the downhill ski slope that is sort of like realizing you're like, wow, I really should write a book. And then suddenly being like, oh my God, I'm writing a book. And most of those things sort of started innocently in that way.
Where are you at in that process? Are you still like, what's your relationship with your book right now? Are you in love with it? Are you like in the business part of it?
That is such a good question. I think that is like a thing that I wish I heard authors speak more about before I was writing a book, because I didn't realize how many like relationship phases you have to go through in order to write and edit and sell a book. Right now, I sort of like vacillate from day to day, where like some days I'll wake up and be so psyched. Like today's a great day. I was like, this is so fun. I'm going to talk about my book with these intelligent people who love books. It's very hard, honestly. Like, you know, we live in a very isolated world where we're like, everybody loves books. Then you sort of go out into the real world and you're like, whoa, most of these people haven't read a book in a year. So it is such a joy when someone's like, I liked your book. And then you get to have this really intelligent, in-depth conversation about a thing you did. How amazing. But then other days I've been waking up and being like, is it too late to cancel this? Is it too late to just like say it was like a crazy prank and just sort of go back and pretend this never happened? Because I'll meet a friend or I'll see somebody who I haven't seen in a couple years and we'll like run into each other backstage at UCB and they'll be like, oh, and by the way, I pre-ordered your book. And then I'll suddenly have an image of that person at their home reading my book, like in my mind. And I'll be like, oh, I was kidding. There's no book. I don't know where you pre-ordered. That must have been a scam. Like that's that's where I am right now, leading up to it. But also like en route to getting it. I am a person who likes to be extremely in love while I'm writing. And so like my ideal writing circumstances are that I've sort of created a private little world for me to go to where no one else knows about the characters of the book except for myself. I'm extremely private while I'm writing. I don't want to tell other people about things. It's not even like a paranoia, you're going to steal my idea thing. It's truly that I don't want to let other people into my relationship bubble. I like get very obsessed and very in love with the writing process and the world. And then you have to query the book. And that sucks, because then you're still very much in love with it and you're only really meeting rejection, which is fine. You know what I mean? That is sort of the natural process of things. But it's very hard not to feel sad about it. And I say this as somebody who comes from acting. So I really mean this. I thought I didn't have ego left to bruise. Like acting is such a it is such a difficult process, and it is so full of rejection. I kind of thought I had no feelings left to hurt. And then I like discovered all these brand new feelings I had to get left to get hurt when I was like querying this novel. And then it gets accepted. And then you're like, I knew it. I knew it was amazing and that I'm a genius, that these characters are perfect. And then you edit it, and it's been a year, if you're lucky. Do you know what I mean? Like for me, it was about a year and a half before it had been like accepted, looked at, a draft sent back to me for edits. And I wasn't in love anymore, and had to get back in love in order to make intelligent edits or to write more. I'm sorry that I basically started immediately talking. You asked one question.
It's a podcast. This is literally great. What you're here for. Do it all day.
Wonderful. But yeah, I had a really difficult time getting back in love again. And then you send that back, and then it's like a couple months, and then you get another draft. You have to fall in love again. So it's a very interesting relationship where you're in and out of love a lot of times with the same book.
It's a relationship. It's a relationship, yeah.
And it sounds like a relationship where you're the only person doing the work, where it's like this other entity is like, I don't know, whatever. Like, you know, I'm ready for you when you want to meet me. And you're like, I'm trying. I'm really trying.
It's a very vulnerable thing to do too, because I think what you mentioned, you're writing something that you're so in love with it. And then you have to be okay to put out there, like, here's what I wrote that I love, judge it. And you just have to like, it's very, like, I admire that type of strength to be able to kind of put something like that out there and getting it to fruition, even though it sounds like such a scary thing and vulnerable thing to do.
It definitely is. And weirdly, I felt less vulnerable about the actual piece. I was still like very like proud of it and excited to share it. But you start to have to think of it in these ways that feel so against that like ushy-gushy creative process where you're like, they're just my babies and I love them in this story and the journey. And then you start immediately making a spreadsheet that's like blank agent at blank agency wants these kinds of narratives. So I have to write this query letter specifically to address that I think the book is this. And then you completely change your morals. And the next one you write, you're like, this is totally different than the last one I sent because you like this, right? So you're like tap dancing, selling.
It's a resume for your book.
Yes. And it's like it feels a little bit like taking a bunch of business meetings at the same time, and in one room, you know, the person's like looking for something that's very emotional, and you go in there and you're like, get ready to have your shit rocked. This is gonna be the most emotional, sincere journey of your life. But then, you know, in the next room, somebody's a little more like genre focused, so you immediately like take off that hat and you're like, do you love genre? I have this is gonna be the most genre you've ever read, actually. That other room where I was saying it was literary fiction, I was lying. What it really is speculative fiction in this room. And so you like I don't know, it's such a funny way you like start to like piecemeal your book and think about ways to sell it, and you mean all of it, like none of them are lies, but it is just such a strange process to have a piece that you worked on holistically and care about holistically, and then you start sort of like chopping it up into piecemeals to be like, you like the end of the world, right? You said you like sci-fi in your you know, I forget what it's called, manuscript wish list. This is sci-fi. And like in my head, I'm like, no, it's not. but you like have to get someone to read it. Yeah.
I mean, I've never heard someone talk so beautifully about like that weird intersection between art and commerce quite this well, because you're like, here's my little baby and I'm sending her into the street to make a dollar. Yeah. It's like,
and you're like, you go baby, you beautiful baby. And then I'm like, and she can be anything you want her to be. And it's like, it's sick.
You're like, but she is, I mean, the thing about this book is like, it is a lot of things. And I think it is like the kind of book that meets readers where they are. Like there's a lot of entrances into it depending on the kind of thing that you're looking for. And there's a lot to take away. And like that is special. That's really hard to do.
Well, thank you. Yeah. It's one of those things where I also think many writers are a bit smarter in what's the word I'm looking for? subconscious, not quite, but I feel like when you're starting to write something, you are largely working off your taste and instincts. And I think a lot of people who are creatives, who have stayed creatives for a while, have pretty good taste and instincts. Now, like, the best vessel for them, the best way in, I'm not entirely sure. But I think if you are sort of in touch with being like, there's something here, something interests me here, ultimately you'll get to the bottom of what is really good. And so it's a strange thing where, like, I certainly wasn't thinking at the time, oh, here are all these different ways in to this novel. These are different people who will engage with this. I can see how a person who hasn't necessarily experienced loss but has experienced blank, oh, this is so for them too. I wasn't thinking about that at all. Now on the other side of it, I really thank you for saying that, but I do also like think and hope it's true that it's not a super straightforward about one thing narrative, and I think there's a lot of different interpretations, ways to feel about it. But you have to go through a weird walking on coals period where, like, the minute you're done with it and you're sort of happy with it, you have to start being like, you know what book this is exactly like? This one. You have to read it. It's just, it's very, it is a strange little hurdle that you have to get to, because I like this part much better. I like this part way better, where I send books to smart people and they go, oh my God, you know what? It's about this. And I go, yes. Yes, it is. It's always been about this. Smart person who said a smart thing before I had to say anything. Yes, exactly. Do you know what I mean? This is way better.
So, but let me ask you this. Like, I know that the book has so many different themes. It can be like a love story or an apocalyptic story. Like, what was the initial idea or thought that kind of kicked off the book process?
I had an idea probably 2.5 years before I started writing. That was, I got obsessed with this notion of, what if you already knew you were dying at the end of the world? That was just sort of like an in that I was thinking, like, when the world is dealing with basically the worst news, is it not horrible news for you? Does it even the playing field? Would you react differently? Would you make amends differently? Like there's just a bunch of questions. And then I sort of kicked that idea around for a while, which I tend to do with ideas. I am not a person who has like 100 work in progresses in different drafts going at the same time. I think it seems like that because of the amount of different things I do professionally, but it is not my ideal way to work. My ideal way to work is to sort of like rock tumble an idea until it starts to feel real, and then to like put it into the production pipeline and then like go. So I rock tumbled that idea for a while. And as things happened in my real life and also in the universe, there was sort of the COVID of it all, which really felt like apocalyptic in a way. Certainly in that, like, it was a mass grieving of a way of life, but also people. Different parts of it started to, like, the clouds started to part on different parts of it. Because then I had an idea of a road trip at the end of the world. I love road trip stories. And so this idea of like, what if you already knew you were dying at the end of the world sort of dovetailed with this other thing that excited me, which was a road trip at the end of the world. And then from there, little thematic things that interested me seemed like natural fibers that we could sort of get braided into this narrative. I started really thinking a lot about how people deal with bad news, and how some people seem completely equipped, like they were born to deal with crisis, and some people don't, and how what we expect from people, also especially like in a gendered way. This was something I thought about a lot because I was a caretaker for both of my parents who passed. They passed within 2 years of each other, so it was a very, very quick turnaround from one to the other. And I just was amazed at what you sort of expect women to do or feel or come naturally. It really, really interested me. And so, of course, I became obsessed with like not just how people deal with stress and trauma, but what we expect from people in the world just by like how they were born into the world or how they appear to the world. So that became a little like there were just a bunch of little things that sort of started to tickle my brain that the more that I sort of let the idea marinate, they all felt like the same idea. And then characters were able to sort of grow naturally out of those impulses. And yeah, the very last thing that happened, and this is going to sound so stupid because it is that I had a lot of pieces in place. And I knew that one of the relationships I really wanted to focus on was something familial, because I had already come up with an idea of a relationship that was romantic and not family. And as I was starting to think about like what the impetus would be for this road trip, and I was like, well, maybe one member of this family wants to be with the rest of the family, like visit parents before the world ends. But if I've already established that this other character has a very tenuous relationship with them and doesn't want to do that, why in the world would they go? And also, if they're like brother and sister, how can one sibling really truly have that different of a relationship with a parent? Because I know sibling relationships can differ, but if they're really that close, and like especially in this relationship, I don't feel this is too much of a spoiler, the younger one really looks to the older one as like a hero. And so I didn't see a world where they could have the same parents and she could love him that much, but also be okay with the fact that the parents didn't treat him well. I was like, this doesn't make sense. And so I just struggled with it and banged my head on it forever. And then during like the early days of COVID, I was hanging out with friends who lived in the same building as we did. And our friend Gray had never watched Lord of the Rings. So we were like, oh my God, this is perfect. We've got more hours than we ever could dream of. Let's watch all of Lord of the Rings. And of course, the first question that everybody asks within an hour of the movie is, how do those people know each other? How are they related? Who are they? How are they related? And I out loud said, everyone's cousins. Assume everyone's cousins. And then I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, everyone's cousins. And I outlined a draft of the book that night. That's all it took. That was it. That was like the last piece of the puzzle that I couldn't make fit. And then I had to watch Lord of the Rings and be like, don't worry, just assume everybody's cousins, to go, oh my God, right, cousins exist. So there you go. That was the last thing I needed to slot itself into place.
Magda and I are laughing because we talked a lot about what you're talking. We do always like a little, recap thoughts on the books before we do the interviews just to set the tone. And like so much of what you're saying here, we talked about, particularly about how each of the characters is sort of a vehicle for different personality types and how they deal with bad information. And you're like, before this, we were talking about a totally different topic about how like sibling relationships are really complicated. So I actually think it worked out really well that they're cousins because it does make sense. Like if they were siblings, they would not have, I'm convinced, the relationship that they have.
I completely agree.
But it's, as you were talking, I was thinking like, even when we were talking before, like plot points in this book, yes, they are spoilers, but they really are not the thing of the book that makes the book so special. It is completely. For me, like the characters and their relationships, and your characters in particular, and maybe this was intentional because you were saying like the way that in which grief is gendered, are like very relatable, but also like highly specific. They are highly specific in their backgrounds. They are highly specific in the way that you write them. And it's what makes them like so utterly readable. I'm in love with every single one of them for different reasons.
That feels great. Thank you so much.
It's very true. But I'm not just saying that to flatter you. It would, otherwise, this would be a very short interview.
But go ahead. Yeah, I'm just kidding.
But I'm curious, like, were these, where did you start with building them? Like, are these people that you know? Are these like ideas that you wanted to play with? Like, how did you build them out?
Yes. They are based on no one. And the question I think I get the most is like, which one's you? And again, the answer is no one. There's certainly bits and pieces, I think, in all of them that I feel again, that thing of like, you can't break into something without a bit of your own taste. Like, I think that's when you see a piece of art that doesn't feel reflective of anyone. I feel like the culprit is taste. That like somebody wanted a product, but like nobody kind of figured out what their flavor was, and they got made, but nobody had any spice to put in. So I think I would have been unable to make these characters if I didn't have some little, like, just a nerve in common with all of them. But none of them specifically are like, oh, I used to have a relationship with this person and they betrayed me in this way, so I wanted to put that in this book. It's like nothing like that. I really do like to think about themes. Like, I think that comes from my theater background more than my literary background, because plays generally are about relationships and themes. Some plays are super plot driven, but I would say on the whole, most plays are about a larger umbrella theme and then the ways that people like react to that. That's why so many things are like, the matriarch of this family died and we all come back to the family home to have dinner. And you're like, well, that play sounds boring. But then you go see it and you're like, holy shit. that's what plays are. It's about like relationships put into a blender, smashed up against each other. And then like, you know, the history of these characters coming to light because there was, I don't know, some inciting incident shot them out of a cannon. And so, like you said, I don't think this is a super plot-heavy book. Stuff happens, but there's really no plot thing where you're just like, oh my God, I can't believe that happens. Like, it's really not that way. So it really did come down to, if I want to take people on a road trip, who do I want to take? And like, what would be the most fun things to reflect off of them? And so that is my favorite part of writing, is coming up with characters and like character history and the idiosyncratic things that make them feel real. That again, I think comes from my improv history. I love improv, and I do largely do improv from a comedic bend, even though I know that there are tons of people who do it dramatically. I don't really do that. But it's the same, you learn the same toolkit, which is like, there needs to be a philosophy to make characters move. And then the fun part is, how can other characters poke at them to make the fun stuff come out? And so I do think about writing a lot in that way too, of like, who's the most fun person to put in a very small space with this person? What would make them crazy? What would make their personality shine more in contrast to it? But then also, like, I bet you tons of writers would say this, where like, you just wake up one morning with a little thing that makes you, that feels real to you for no reason. Like, I remember early in this writing process, because I was thinking about like gendered expectations of grief and caretaking and empathy, I was like, oh, I kind of want the male protagonist who is the very empathetic one, who is the natural caretaker. I was like, I think that he should go by a nickname that's female, like kind of sort of traditionally female. And that he likes it, and like that's like that's not like a source of like, that's not like a sore spot, but that it's like, that's how he's sort of like known in the world. Which then sort of led me to being like, okay, well, what are some of those names that exist that way? And then that sort of word cloud brought me to another idea, which was like, oh, I don't want it to be that it was a nickname that was given in a bad way. Like, I don't want it to be like, this is a thing a bully gave me and I reclaimed it. I was like, I think I want him to love it. And then it led me to being like, so then he probably doesn't really love his given name, but like why, and like what kind of a name would that be, which then led me to being like, well, maybe it's a really stuffy sort of traditional one, and then I was like, maybe it's kind of a religious one. I mean, like it just sort of like walked me down a path that everything started to sort of make sense as it's like you're walking down a path and the trees are magically clearing, so as opposed to feeling like you have to take this axe and like hack at it and be like, I'm gonna make this work. I like this feeling of slowly traversing down a path and seeing like the things that magically clear themselves out of the way and going like, yeah, that makes sense. And if that makes sense, then this makes sense. And if that makes sense, then this makes sense. I think it helps walk you to a character that feels realer, as opposed to being like, there's an answer in that clearing over there, and I'm going to take an axe, I'm going to hack my way to it the fastest way possible. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I have to mention this moment really quickly before Magda moves on, because Josie is a character that, like, you're talking about Josie, obviously, Josiah. And there's this moment at the beginning where I feel like perfectly captures that feeling that you're trying to evoke of like, okay, he doesn't like hate his nickname, even though it's really feminine. And it's when Gabe asks him like, how did you find me? And he says, I Googled gay things to do in New York. And that moment made me laugh so hard, because he says it like, one, he admits to it and like very unironically like wants to find these things to do in New York, and then like genuinely enjoys the things that he does find that he can like afford. And I'm like, man, if this isn't a moment that like perfectly captures a man named Josiah who loves the name Josie and like is this sort of light in the book, like it's just a moment that I didn't mention before, but I like had to bring up because I was like, that was just such a perfect like characterization of who Josie is in the book. And I was like, I love this person. We all know this person. I don't know. It's just very funny.
Then also he then like immediately after is like, well, the first result I didn't want to see because it was like a musical cabaret, which is also like this other part of him that's like, at his worst, sort of a humorless scold, but at his best is just like this unbelievably deeply pragmatic person who wants to engage more with the world. And again, it's like, I do know that person. It's not a person. Like, I can't point to a singular person and go like, that's you. But of course I know that person, and I love that person. And I think like, I don't know, I have yet to write something where I haven't felt like deep love in the world for the kinds of people these characters are. And I wonder what it will feel like when I don't, or I wonder if I always will. Like, I don't know, maybe I'll never find my way to a narrative where I don't feel so strongly about the kinds of people that these people represent to me in the world. I don't know. But that's the only way that I was able to sort of like clear the path for these ones.
You know, you mentioned pretty earlier on that like you write very specifically around themes, and like obviously like the big theme around this book is the potential of things ending, but underneath that there's a little bit of unfinished business, right? Like we see Josie not able to like contact his family and he just seems okay with it. Lizzie with her parents, like there's a lot of unfinished business there too. And Gabe with his family, was that something that you're intentionally trying to do? Like even if we have some time, we choose to leave things in an unfinished level, and that's just like the human factor of things.
Totally. That is such an astute read. It's also that thing of like, we all assume things will last forever until we suddenly get insight that they won't, which I think also was a huge part of this for me. I think, again, I wish I could say I was smart enough to, at the time of writing, be like, all of this made exact sense to me. I could diagnose where it all came from, and it didn't. But like, it seems so clear to me in retrospect that like one of the earliest things you assume will last forever is your parents. You like are born into a family, and regardless of your relationship with the family, whether it is positive or negative, your parents sort of seem immortal, and like you're just like, they'll live forever. And then suddenly you have this realization that no, they won't. And I am very lucky to say that like I had a very close relationship with my parents. My parents were awesome. Do you know what I mean? And so like a lot of this book has to do with unresolved familial tensions and disappointments and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's not to say that everything's perfect. Like, again, I sort of was cannonballed into a lot of like, I think, feelings that most people don't have until like much later in their life about like what it feels like to end your relationship with a parent, and like messy stuff that comes with it, and like questions you'll never have answered, and like messes that they left for you intentionally or not. Like, again, my parents were great people, and so they didn't leave me any messes on purpose, but holy shit, if you lose both parents, you have no idea what you're about to inherit, kind of, like, in so many ways, including like their relationships with people. Like, suddenly, I don't know, suddenly you become like the figurehead for other people's it's so strange. So obviously, like, I don't think when I sat down to write this, I was thinking like, that's what this book's about, but I obviously was feeling it so deeply, and obviously had something I wanted to say about it or feel about it that made its way into this narrative. But yeah, we all walk around thinking things will last forever until we suddenly go like, oh my God, things aren't gonna last forever. And so that did interest me. Like, that was more of an intentional thought of just like, oh yeah, if everybody had the exact same timeline, if it wasn't like, uh-oh, this one person's thinking about mortality and this person's skipping through life, never thinking about it ever. What if we all got the same deadline at the exact same time? How would people react, and who deals with it well and who doesn't deal with it well? That was more intentional than Freudian, and sort of something I only realized sort of like in draft 2 of being like, right, yeah, see that. But yeah, you know, it's we all feel that, whether or not we like are in tune with it.
No, but I love that you're like, okay, but even afterwards when you read it, you're like, oh yeah, that theme came up in there. So it kind of goes back to your initial thought of like re-falling in love with your story again. And
Totally.
just kind of like seeing like, I can't believe like these other things kind of naturally came up, kind of going back to your analogy about like clearing the palm trees and just kind of letting the story come true, which is so beautiful.
And also like one thing that I love, and this is just personal taste, but I love when a story captures an actor in a really realistic way, just because I was one for such a long time and am basically exclusively friends with performers at this point, and grew up with a bunch of people who were actors. I wasn't like a child actor, but I had friends who were. And so when I see a movie or read a book that has a character in it who is an actor, who doesn't just feel like a series of tropes, but like, I'm like, oh my God, this person knows actors or loves actors or hates actors, whatever. I love that. And so I knew I had an instinct that I wanted to have a character in the book who was an actor, because I just think actors perceive the world in a different way. But another like unexpected thing that happened is like it's the same thing of like you write some things with intention and some things surprise you. So that was like something I wrote with intention. I was like I'd like to write an actor. I think I can do it, and I think I've got a realistic one in there. Let's do it. And then it was only like in edits and writing back on it that I was like, oh, I love her. Because it's more fun to start writing something from a place of like, here are some of the things I could tell you about people like this, and this is make fun ofable, and this is kind of juicy in a fun way of like a knowing nod to something that other people might not know. But it was only like looking back on it that I was like, oh wait, I love actors. I only wrote her that way because I loved it, and I love her for it and all of her eccentricities and things. And I don't know, it's like I didn't expect, even in the intentional thing, like I'm going to write a character who's an actor, I still didn't know how much I'd feel about her that was positive and like make me want to reconnect with people in my life like her. Do you know what I mean? I had no idea.
It does show like the love, like not just like the love story between them, but like the love story to like the arts and the performing arts and everything. Even starting with the title here, like, you know, we have reached the end of our show. It's so like artistic and it works in so many ways. So I think you did a really beautiful job capturing that love for the arts and acting. That I don't think it came across as like a performative thing. I think it just fits in really well with the story as a whole.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to see the way that like Lacey and Gabe are both performers, and like a huge part of their relationship, or a huge part of Lacey's love for Gabe is his like support of her performance in a very real way, which I think like anyone that's in creativity like wants that person who's like gonna bolster them but also be honest with them. And I think it's such a real relationship with like a person who makes any kind of art, whether it's an actor or whatever, wanting that sounding board. And I did think it was interesting, just quickly leading to a couple of questions, like Josie is sort of he's the, not the foil, but he is the opposing side of that. He's very like literal and serious and pragmatic. And he loves the performance aspect of Gabe's personality. He doesn't seem to love it as much in Lisey. And I'm curious, like, where you think that tension comes from, even though Lisey and Gabe are like really similar, just at different points of their life.
I mean, you know, this again, I don't feel as like a major spoiler, so I feel comfortable being like, hey, if you haven't read the book and you still hear this, it's fine. A big part of tension in the book is that Josie's very good at dealing with crisis. Lisey is not. And so there is an inherent bias that he feels against basically anything she'll ever do forevermore, which I also think is so realistic. And I also think it's sort of a trait in people who are some of the most amazing, loving, caretaking people I've ever met are also like the biggest grudge holders I've ever met, because they have so much love in their lives for those that they have like, that they are taking care of and like have under their wing. And then like there are those who fall outside the shield and they're like, I don't even understand those people. I don't understand how they could act that way. And so I won't introspect about that at all because it doesn't make sense to me. Which he very much is, I feel. But there's also a thing, and I feel like I can say this because I'm saying it with love, where actors are annoying. And Gabe is not an actor, Gabe is a dancer. And Gabe makes his own stuff, and he is a choreographer. And I think there's a thing of like, I'm watching your body do the thing that you intended it to do. It's beautiful, it's physical. It can sometimes be sexual. I don't mean that like inherently always all dance is sexual, but like obviously there's like a connection that they feel the first time that Josie watches Gabe dance, and he's like attracted to his literal form on Earth. Whereas actors are like anybody, and I can, you know, it's like I'm malleable, I'm anybody, I'm everybody, my process, you know what I mean? Like it's like there's so many embarrassing things about being an actor, and good actors are obsessed with the craft of acting, and ultimately it's so fucking annoying, which I'm allowed to say as one. So like, do you know what I mean? It's like, there's just something about acting that is like so brazen in being like, stop, I need to feel emotional right now. I have to, leave me alone. I've got to like go make feelings. That I think feels like kind of weirdly histrionic to him. Do you know what I mean? Like in a way that like dancing feels more intentional, and I don't know. That's my gut instinct. I wish I had a concrete answer. But yeah, I think it's just that like we need actors, because without actors, like projects don't exist. But we also are just like, ugh, actors. It's just so easy to like to just laugh at and like take every sort of frustration out on actors.
Yeah, completely. Yeah.
I mean, Magda, you mentioned this, but now I'm thinking about it. She asked me this question, like, oh, why do you think they don't get along? And I like, you said, like, do you think he's jealous? And I think maybe you meant, like, is he jealous of Lisey and Gabe? But now I wonder, like, is he maybe jealous of Lisey, like, being unencumbered? As someone who's, like, very, like, serious, like, maybe he's just, like, I wish I could be that way, and it's fundamentally not who I am. I don't know.
I really think that's true. Because, like, you know, when you are in a relationship with somebody and you're very close, almost all other relationships feel like a threat to yours, even if that's like a completely irrational thought that you can like talk yourself out of. Like, I don't think that is the fundamental baseline of Josie and Gabe's relationship. I think they have a very healthy relationship and are like good adults in the world. But there's always that like little baby brain inside of you that's like, stop my bubble. And I do think he definitely feels that with Lisey, especially because she doesn't measure up, you know, like in his sort of unfair yardstick way. She has things that she doesn't do, and therefore he's mad, and he's also not going to confront her about it because he's not a confrontational person. And so he's just going to sort of resent her from afar, which is where we find them at the top of this narrative. But yes, I also think it's a thing of like, he is serious, he is practical, he had a very difficult childhood, he's lived with repression has been a huge part of his life. And I think when you see people who aren't that way, it's really hard not to resent that, because you can't help but imagine what you would be or feel like or know, or what you would have gotten to sooner if you hadn't had parts of yourselves like compressed really forcefully, into things, away from things, whatever. And to him, she seemingly has had like a perfect life. And so any struggle on her part seems like foolish. You know what I mean?
My face is melting because I'm like, oh God, I'm feeling this very, I'm feeling personally attacked, Allie.
It's
I
real.
don't like
It's
it.
so real, though.
It's
like,
so real.
it's so real. And like, this again was not something I sat down to write to do. Like, I wasn't like, when I write Josie, I'm writing this character. But again, another thing that I realized, like, as I was writing it was, I always really liked the book Jane Eyre when I was a kid. I just was I think many people did. I don't think I'm like spectacular for saying that. But I was always like really moved by that story. I think I read it in like middle school, and I remember everybody else in my class hating it and me being like, what? I loved it. And I think Josie sort of is my Jane Eyre. Do you know what I mean? Like he really has there's a lot in common there, including the fact that like they're both people who were like shoved through a very tough existence. And so it's just very interesting to see like what that's like when one, it's not a woman, when two, it's in modern day. Do you know what I mean? It's like there are definitely questions where these things diverge, but like in my mind, he's secretly always been like my little Jane Eyre.
I love that. We just kind of cover so much, but like, in your opinion, like if you were to kind of tell the readers, like this is like the main message or moral that I want you to kind of get out of this story, like what would that be? You would say?
That's a great question. I mean, while the book is about a lot of things, I think the ultimate thing is nothing's more real than relationships. It's kind of the thing that will survive and outlast everything.
Yeah.
In fact, they even outlast the relationship. You can have feelings about a relationship that is long gone, or a person that's not there anymore. Like it's amazing how like the very nature of the fact that you had a relationship can sometimes outlive a relationship. Crazy. So I do think that is like the number one with a bullet sort of like theme message of the book. But the other thing that I've been thinking of, and I certainly wasn't thinking of when I was writing, but this is again one of those like, oh, I'm coming back around to it and going, oh, I'm realizing this, is there's a real instinct, very human, completely understandable, that when people talk about bad things happening to other people, we say, I can't imagine. And when I started going through things that I could not have previously imagined, started going, you know what? We should start imagining it. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I think we might be better suited for the world if we engaged with imagining some unimaginable things a little better and a little sooner, which again feels like a very Josie way of the world, right? Of just like, okay, I endured hardship, I encountered it, I see hardship in the world, and therefore I am not afraid of it. But then you meet these people who like, again, I'm not saying this with any sort of, I don't mean to say this in a demeaning way, but like when I lost my parents, which I had not previously imagined, I would talk to people and they'd be like, oh my God, I can't imagine. Like I talk to my mom every day, like I call her for a recipe, and I call her when I'm driving, and I just like, I can't imagine. And like, I wouldn't say it, but like what I'd want to say is like, hey, you should imagine it. Not because I want you to be sad, and not because you should engage with the like, like being depressed at any given moment that you might lose your mom, but that like, barring an emergency or a tragedy on your end, the way that time works is that at some point you're going to say goodbye to your mom.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to have done before you get there? What do you wish you had said? What do you wish you had felt? What do you wish you had done together? Do you know what I mean? It's like, so it's not even engaging in a negative way of like, now that I've realized bad things can happen, I need to wake up every day sad about the fact that bad things can happen. but of just being like, I'm much more comfortable taking this head on because like I didn't previously shove it into a box that was labeled unimaginable. And then suddenly it was sprung on me and I'm not dealing with it well. Do you know what I mean?
We're going to sit here in stunned silence for a few more moments because you have really pressed a button in Magda and I's box of things we talk about a lot. And it's
That's
so
great.
true. And you've said it so beautifully. And this book is just like a perfect manifestation of that thought. And we are just, I mean, Magda, chime in. We're just like super grateful to have been able to talk to you about this.
Thank you. No, I really am so glad. Like, I know that this book is sad. I'm just going to say that. This is a sad book. I love sad books, though, so I'm not embarrassed by that. But I'm just like, I know that this book engages with some sad stuff. But I really, really hope, really, 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 really hope that, like, ultimately people leave the book and are like, that was sad, but I'm thinking about other things. Like, that it doesn't leave you with an impression of just like, boy, oh boy, now I'm sad. Like, I'm hoping that it, like, makes people think more about relationships or the nature of time or loss or a bunch of things. Sad being a sort of like umbrella term for a lot of feelings, but that it ultimately is not like depression. Does that make sense?
Oh,
No,
totally.
I mean, for a book about the end of the world, it is a hopeful novel.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the way that we opened up the episode was like, this is like, it's a book about ending, but it's the most heartwarming story ever. Like, it still made me feel like all fuzzy and cozy because like the way that you build the relationships and the connections, I think that's kind of such a big theme in here, and it's just made it such a hopeful story in a way. Like,
Yeah,
it was
thank
just
you.
beautiful. Yeah. So yeah,
Thank
just
you.
because the theme is sad for the listeners out there, it is a really hopeful story.
Thank you. Yeah, there's also like, there is a love story in this that is not expected. That's like the best way I can sort of phrase it. That is like both not spoilery, but also I think pretty accurate, where it's just like, we meet two characters in a relationship. So we're going to follow those characters in that relationship, and that will be truthful as much as I possibly can. And here we go. But then there's another story in here that is like an unexpected love story.
Absolutely true. Allie, tell everyone where they can find you, what you have coming up next. Give us all the
Sure.
deets.
Cool. So, as we have said, my book is called We Have Reached the End of Our Show. You can get it basically anywhere. You can find me on Instagram at Miss Alice Nutting. That's MSALICE NUTTING. I also have a website, whatdoesallygordondo.com. As we sort of mentioned at the top of this, I believe, there's a lot of things there. Like, you can find out about my book for sure, but also you can find out about my comedy there, and also I write musicals. So if you're interested in me at all, that's a pretty good place to go. It'll answer some questions. The main question being, what does Allie Gordon do? Which is a lot. And if you are listening to this episode, then my book has been published already. Yay! It comes out on September 30th, so ideally the world has existed and we're past then. So if you live in New York or anywhere sort of in the tri-state area, I am doing a book launch event for the East Coast at the Corner Bookstore in Manhattan on October 6th at 6 p.m. I think it's going to be really fun. I have some comedians doing some material about like the intersection of grief and comedy. I'll be there. We'll sign some books. It'll be really fun. Then I'm also doing that in Chicago. So if you are in the Midwest, someplace-ish, I'm doing it at Volumes Book Cafe in Wicker Park on October 21st. I'm sure all this information will be on my Instagram. So if you're like, I can't remember all this, don't worry. Just find it there. But yes, if you want to come talk about this stuff or yell at me or say I made you sad, I welcome it. And you can find me at those places at those times.
We'll also put it on our socials too, just so everybody can kind of make sure that they're following along too.
Amazing.
Well, thank you so much, Allie. And thank you for listening to Literally Books, the podcast, where we say what we read.
And we mean what we say. Bye.